Statistics are particularly beloved by the communications media, television, radio, and newspapers. They are seen as hard facts as opposed to opinions, and are much more likely to be quoted when reporting on people or organizations whose opinions are seen as requiring support from facts. Thus, a pressure group is much more likely to have a story published in a national newspaper if it can support it with statistical evidence. A number of organizations working in the field of race relations have traditionally sought to base their argument on statistical evidence, believing that only by their doing this will serious attention be paid by those whom the organizations hope to convince, whether these be members of parliament, key civil servants in important departments, or the general public. Only by presenting facts, as opposed to opinion, such organizations might argue, can the argument for more effective action be won. There is, indeed, considerable truth in this. Most people in Britain today would probably agree that racial discrimination is wrong and should not be tolerated. But they would probably disagree about the existence and the extent of such discrimination. Many would have to be convinced that it did indeed exist in certain areas of life and would have to be shown proof of its extent. During the years that I worked at the Runnymede Trust, the Race Relations Research and Information Body, common response from people to whom the organization was trying to put a case was that they wanted statistics as proof of what was being said. It was not enough to claim, for instance, that there was discrimination by the police or by employers. Hard evidence had to be produced to prove the truth of such charges. Statistics, it should be said, are not the only form of evidence used. The so-called case study is also frequently presented as proof. Here, instead of statistics which might not be available, or in addition to such statistics, examples of actual cases are cited in order to support an argument. In these examples, statistical information is either not available or would not really be appropriate. I should like to give an example from my experience of the reliance on statistics and the problems which can arise. Sometime in early 1992, I took a telephone call at the Runnymede Trust from a television journalist who was thinking about making a short film on racial attacks in East London. She was, I might say, unclear about what the Runnymede Trust actually was, but she had heard from a colleague that we collected statistics and wanted to know what statistics we had on racial violence in that area. I explained that, while we did indeed have much statistical information, this was only a small part of the material we held in our library and files. As for racial attacks, I went on to explain, we probably did have some figures, but there were a number of serious problems with these. First, the only ones available were those gathered by the Metropolitan Police, and it was widely accepted, both by the police and by those campaigning on the issue, that they represented but a small fraction of all incidents. The vast majority, perhaps as much as 90%, were not reported to the police. Second, there was the problem of definition. The concept of racial attacks, as it is most commonly understood, refers to attacks which are in some way racially motivated. The definition used by the police, on the other hand, refers to interracial incidents, by which they mean incidents in which aggressor and victim come from different ethnic groups. Third, there were problems in interpreting statistics such as these, because it is difficult to say whether the increases and decreases reflect the tendency to report incidents or the actual occurrence of the problem. I could sense a growing impatience, possibly irritation, on the part of the caller. After all, I seemed to be standing in the way of some information that she wanted. So, she asked, how could she measure any rise or fall in racial attacks in the area? I suggested that they might talk to people in the area, local residents and workers, for instance, or to community organizations, the police, and so on. That way she might get a better picture of what was happening. To the journalist, however, this would not provide facts, only impressions, opinions. What she needed was facts, and these could only come in statistical form. I offer this story because it provides an example, typical in my experience, of the way in which many people look at statistical information. Here was someone committed to an idea of journalistic objectivity, looking for objective factual information and seeing in statistical data the most factual and objective kind of information available. The lived experience of human beings was, as far as this journalist was concerned, simply not factual enough. In effect, she was defining reality in terms of what could be measured. This, of course, is not something that is peculiar to journalists. We all, at some point or another, want some kind of factual information to support cases we are making, and to many people there is nothing as factual and objective and indisputable as a statistic.